Inventing Whiteness. Beloved, let me start by telling you an ugly secret. There is no such thing as white people. And yet so many of them, so many of you exist. Please hear me out. I know you're flesh and blood. I know that you use language and forks and knives. I'm not talking about your bodies or your garages or your grocery stores. I'm talking about the politics of whiteness. I'm talking about an identity that exists apart from the skin you're born in. I'm talking about a meaning of race that supersedes the features you inherit when you come out of the womb. You don't get whiteness from your genes. It's a social inheritance that is passed on to you as a member of a particular group. And it's killing us. And quiet as it's kept, it's killing you too. Race has no meaning outside of the cultures we live in and the worlds we fashioned out of its force and energy. Whiteness is an advantage and privilege because we have made it so, not because the universe demands it. So I want to tell you right off the bat that whiteness is made up, and that white history disguised as American history is a fantasy, as much a fantasy as white superiority and white purity. Those are all myths. They're intellectual rubbish, cultural garbage. The quicker you accept that, the better off you'll be, and so will the rest of us. Yes, I know many of you are proud to be Irish, or Italian, or Polish, or Jewish. And those ethnic groups are as real as any other groups with identifiable cultures, languages, and histories. But when your ancestors got to America, they endured a profound makeover. All of your polkas or pubs or pizzas and more got tossed into a crucible of race where European ethnicity got pulverized into whiteness. That whiteness is slapdash, pieced together from the European identities at hand. But there is a pattern to it all. It helped the steady climb of European cultures to dominance over the long haul of history. Whiteness forged togetherness among groups in reverse, breaking down, or at least to a degree, breaking up ethnicity, and then building up an identity that was cut off from the old tongue and connected to the new land. So groups that were often at each other's throats learned to team up in the new world around whiteness. The battle to become American forced groups to cheat on their old selves and romance new selves. Old tribe for new tribe. Old language for new language. Old country for new one. The wasps stung first, but the Italians landed plenty of blows. The Irish fought bare-fisted. The Poles grimaced and bore in. And the Jews punched above their weight, all with one goal, to champion their arrival as Americans. That's how you went from being just Irish, just Italian, just Polish, or just Jewish to becoming white. So please don't deny this when you approach me to tell me about how your experience as a white ethnic parallels my experience as an African American. The comparison ends at the hyphen. My friends, I know reading this frightens many of you. It may even anger you. Please bear with me. Until you make whiteness give up its secrets, none of us will get very far. Whiteness has privilege and power connected to it, no matter how poor you are. Of course, the paradox is that even though whiteness is not real, it is still true. I mean true as a force to be reckoned with. It is true because it has the power to make us believe it is real, and to punish those who doubt its magic. Whiteness is slick and endlessly inventive. It is most effective when it makes itself invisible, when it appears neutral, human, American. Let me share with you one of the first times I faced this truth as an adult. Last year, I returned to Carson Newman College, my alma mater, for the first time in 30 years. I had bolted from the Southern Baptist outpost in Jefferson City, Tennessee, a dreadful throwback to Jim Crow, in 1985, after graduating with high honors and the top prize in philosophy. I had transferred there after spending 2 years at Knoxville College, a black school 30 miles up the highway that didn't have enough philosophy courses for my degree. When I walked onto campus, I got mugged by a version of whiteness that seemed to leap straight from a segregated bus in the 50s. Nestled within tree-lined streets, Carson Newman still has a Mayberry feel all these years later, though Jefferson City isn't fictional, except in the way that all such towns spring from an innocent white imagination. I hadn't been back since the president barred me from campus. It's not as if I got an official letter. There was no formal edict. But my failure to garner an invitation to return to school, even after I gained notice in my vocation, was proof enough. When I was a senior, the administration chose 6 students to make a commercial that would air in the region to promote the college. We had all received fellowships to attend prestigious graduate schools. Mine was the only one in the Ivy League. The president wasted no time in summoning me to his office. Although the man had no doctorate, he still belonged to a fading Southern aristocracy. He demanded that I produce proof on the spot that I'd got into Princeton. After all, Carson Newman's name was on the line. If I turned out to be a fraud, I could damage the college's reputation. I whipped out my offer letter from Princeton. He wasn't pleased, but neither was he deterred. I was especially nervous because I owed the school $7,000 in unpaid tuition. Sneering, the president looked me straight in the eyes and told me that I should get a job and pay my bill instead of going to Princeton. Until I did, my final transcript would be withheld. I quietly seethed. A Princeton dean later assured me that the school had seen most of my grades and didn't require the transcript for me to enroll. But at the moment, I had no such consolation. All I knew is that I'd made it through the blazing guns and bare-knuckled fists of Detroit, and this white man wasn't going to stop me from getting to the Ivy League. I was desperate and determined. I wanted to tell the president that my straight A's in philosophy should have brought me more financial aid. But I was in no mood for begging. The moment of truth had arrived, and I was consumed by anger. I was angry that he slung his invincible whiteness in my face. That anger turned out to be ice-cold rage and chilling verbal ire. If Ralph Ellison warned against doing brain surgery with a switchblade, I wasn't in much better shape by attempting heart surgery on my college president with a verbal safety pin, operating on him prick by prick. Sir, you must know that for me to take a job and give up a world-class education would be extremely short-sighted, I said frostily. You've got to know the value of such a degree. But then I suppose you have no way of knowing since you never earned a Ph.D. His face blushed beet red, sensing my contempt. My defiance didn't defeat Whiteness, but I took pride in giving it a body blow that day. I left his office, and shortly thereafter the college, never to return or to be invited back until he was long gone. Some of my former professors confirmed that as soon as I left the college, he heartily embraced the idea that I shouldn't come back. This was whiteness that demanded total deference to its will and way, a whiteness that demanded respect while offering none in return. The president was angry that I wouldn't let him ruin my life. He certainly tried. Here's something else I learned in the company of white folk. My teachers and fellow students never had to say they were white until someone who wasn't white showed up. The white people at my college saw me as a trespasser, but I made them see that the whiteness they invested in wasn't natural. It was, instead, a contrivance, a historical sleight of hand. They swore that their invented history was objective and built on fact. Any other interpretation had to be challenged. Whiteness has only 2 modes. It either converts or destroys. My black body was a thorn in the flesh of whiteness. My very presence as a black man revealed that whiteness was as artificial as the idea of race on which it rested. And so my flesh, my history, my culture, my mind, my tongue, my being had to be removed. I realize this is a lot for you to take in. It must make you woozy and weak at the knees. So much has been invested in whiteness that it is hard to let it go. It is often defensive, resentful, full of denial and amnesia. The only way to save our nation, and yes, to save yourselves, is to let go of whiteness and the vision of American history it supports. I'm not asking you to let go of your humanity, but in the best way possible, to find your way back to it. You can let go of whiteness when you see it as a moral choice, an ideology, a politic, a terribly fearful reaction to the thing it hates the most, but can least afford to do without, the black people it helped to will into existence. White or black identity is nothing without the people and forces that make it real. White and black folk are bound together, even when we breathe very different meanings into race.